Wyoming Territory, 1879. The wind carried the scent of smoke and pine through the foothills east of Jackson, and 17 men stood outside the saloon whispering the same name with scorn. Jovie Jennings. She crouched behind the old timber fence near the livery, dirt smudged across her cheek, a rifle slung over one shoulder, her eyes sharp and unflinching. She had been gone 2 years. And now that she was back, the town acted like she was a ghost come to ruin them. Thought she died out past the ridge, someone muttered. She shot that banker's mule, another said. Burned down her own father's barn. She's just trouble. None of it was true. Not the way they told it. Jovie stood up slow, boots crunching against gravel, and walked straight into town like she did not care who saw her. Folks stepped back. A woman tugged her boy behind her skirts. The preacher's wife crossed herself. But Jovie's jaw stayed set. Her green eyes didn't blink. She was not here for them. She was here for the boy. She found him inside the church, asleep on a pew, curled beneath a worn quilt. His name was Oliver. 8 years old, all ribs and 2 big eyes. Her late sister's son. Jovie knelt beside him and brushed his dark hair from his forehead. I told you I'd come back, she whispered. He stirred, blinked twice. Then, without a word, crawled into her lap and held on tight. That was the moment August Zane saw her for the first time. He had been hauling lumber to the new schoolhouse when he spotted her through the chapel door. A woman everyone whispered about, holding a sleeping child to her chest with more tenderness than he had ever seen in his life. August was not the kind of man who believed rumors. He had built his life on steady work and quiet watching. At 29, he owned the only carpentry business within 50 miles. Folks said he was too serious, too quiet. But when he saw Jovie Jennings, something in him woke up. He stepped into the church, hat in hand. You need a place to stay. Jovie looked up fast, startled. She pulled Oliver closer. I am not asking you, August said. I am telling you. Ain't safe with folks talking like they are. Jovie narrowed her eyes. You do not know me. You are holding that boy like he is your whole world. That is all I need to know. She hesitated, then nodded once. August had a cabin 2 miles out, tucked behind a ridge of cottonwoods. He led them there in silence, Oliver riding in the wagon bed beneath a blanket, Jovie sitting beside him, her hand resting on the rifle. When they arrived, Jovie stepped out first, eyes scanning the land like she expected someone to follow. August unloaded the wagon without a word, then offered her the key. You can lock it at night, he said. Nobody comes out this far. You trust me in your home? I do. She studied him, then nodded. Thank you. That night, while August chopped wood, he heard laughter from inside the cabin. Oliver's. It was light and sudden, like a creek breaking through ice. It stopped him cold. He walked to the porch and leaned against the beam, listening. Jovie was reading to him from a weathered book, her voice low and warm. She had not smiled once in town, not until now. The next morning, August rode into town alone. He stopped at the mercantile and bought flour, beans, and peppermint candy. When the clerk raised an eyebrow, August said nothing. He just paid and left. By the 3rd day, word had spread. Jovie Jennings was living with August Zane. Figures. Someone spat outside the post office. He always did keep to himself. I heard she used to run with outlaws, said another. She is poison. He will learn soon enough. But August did not waver. He brought Oliver a wooden slingshot carved by hand, and Jovie a new hairbrush wrapped in brown paper. He fixed the porch steps, mended the stovepipe, and made sure they had enough coal to last through the last breath of winter. Jovie watched him with quiet eyes. She did not know what to make of him. Every man she had ever known wanted something. Her father, cruel and sharp-tongued. Her sister's husband, who had taken off the moment the baby was born. Men in distant towns who assumed she was wild because she spoke her mind and rode like a man. But August asked for nothing. One night, After Oliver fell asleep, she stood outside by the firewood stack. August stepped out beside her, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "I should leave," she said, "before they start saying worse. I do not care what they say." She looked at him, confused. "Why?" He took a breath. "Because I have seen you." She felt her throat tighten. "You do not know me, August. You came back for him. You are raising him with nothing but your hands and your will. You walked into a town where everyone hates you, and you did not flinch. That is all I need." She stared at him for a long time. "That boy is all I have left." August nodded. "Then he is lucky to have you." They stood in silence, the wind brushing past them. Then, without thinking, Jovie reached out and touched his wrist. He did not move. And she did not let go. The next week, August brought her into town. She did not want to go. "They will stare. Let them." He walked beside her, his hand brushing hers, Oliver skipping ahead with the slingshot in his pocket. At the mercantile, August held the door open for her. At the bakery, he handed her a fresh roll and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Best woman I know." Jovie kept her head high, even when the whispers started. But something shifted. The blacksmith's wife gave her a nod. The teacher smiled as Oliver waved. At the end of the day, back at the cabin, Jovie sat on the porch with August watching the light fade. "No one has ever stood by me like that," she said. "I always will," he said. She turned toward him. "Why?" "Because you are pure heart, Jovie Jennings. No matter what they say." She looked at him for a long time. Then she leaned in and kissed him. Not fast. Not shy. Just honest. When they pulled apart, he touched her face gently. "I think I am falling for you," he said. And she whispered, "I already did." The spring thaw came late that year. Snow lingered in shaded gullies and along the north sides of hills, stubborn and crusted with ice. August spent most days reinforcing the roof and hauling water from the creek, while Jovie cleared stones from the root cellar and taught Oliver how to tell fresh rabbit tracks from old ones. One morning, as the ground softened underfoot and the sun finally held warmth, Jovie stood beside the log pile sharpening a skinning knife. She held it steady, her movements sure. August watched her from the barn door, arms crossed, wood shavings caught in his sleeves. "You ever think of leaving this place?" he asked. She didn't look up. "Plenty. What keeps you here?" She paused then, the blade held mid-stroke. "He needs roots." Her eyes flicked toward the house. "And I don't want to run any more." August nodded once and stepped off the porch, walking slow. "You ever think of staying then? For good?" Jovie set the knife down. "Not until now." They stood without speaking after that. The wind stirred the bare branches above them, and somewhere in the brush, a grouse called low. That afternoon, the schoolteacher came riding out. Her bonnet was askew, and she looked flushed from the ride. "I need to speak with Jovie," she said, breathless. August stepped aside without a word. Jovie emerged from the doorway, wiping her hands on her skirt. "There's been a sickness," the teacher said. 3 children down with fever. We're short on help." Jovie didn't hesitate. "Let me get my boots." She rode back with the teacher, leaving Oliver with August. The boy sat on the porch steps, silent, watching the road where the dust hadn't even settled. August sat beside him and handed him a biscuit. "She'll come back before dark," he said. Oliver nodded. "She always does." When Jovie reached the schoolhouse, it was worse than she'd expected. 2 girls lay on straw pallets, flushed and restless. A boy sat against the wall, eyes glassy. The teacher's hands trembled as she soaked rags in cool water. "I've sent word to the doctor," she said. "But he's 5 miles off and likely busy." Jovie rolled up her sleeves. "We'll do what we can." She stayed until dusk, wiping sweat and coaxing slow swallows of broth. She hummed under her breath, soft and low, the way her mother used to when her sister had the croup. When one girl began to cry out in her sleep, Jovie sat beside her and held her hand until the spasms eased. When she finally returned to the cabin, the sky had gone lavender with twilight. August was splitting kindling, his shoulders tight with worry. Oliver was asleep on the cot, a folded quilt at his feet. "You should have sent word," August said, not looking up. "There wasn't time." He set the axe down and walked over. Her dress was damp with sweat, and her hands smelled of vinegar and lye soap. He touched her elbow. "You all right?" "I will be." He studied her face in the fading light. "You're not what they called you." "I know. You're better than any of them." She looked away, but not before he saw the flicker behind her eyes. She wasn't used to being spoken to like that. Not by a man who meant it. The next morning, the teacher rode out again. This time, she brought bread and a note from the doctor, scrawled in a hurried hand, "All 3 children improving. Fever breaking." August read it aloud, and Jovie leaned against the doorway, arms folded across her chest. "He'll never say it, but you probably saved them," August said. "I didn't do anything no one else would have done. You did it when no one else could." That evening, as the last light vanished behind the ridge, Jovie took down her sister's old shawl from where it hung by the window. She wrapped it around her shoulders and stepped outside. August sat on the porch rail, sipping from a tin cup. "You ever miss anything?" she asked. He looked up. "Like what?" "A life different than this." He thought for a moment. "Not really. There's peace in work. In land that stays where you left it." She exhaled slow. "I used to think peace was something you run toward. Now I think maybe it's what you build, little by little." He nodded. "You're building it now." They stood quiet for a time. Then she stepped closer. "You've given me more kindness than I ever expected." He reached out, brushing a loose strand of hair from her cheek. "That's not kindness, Jovie. That's just seeing you plain." She leaned in then, her forehead touching his. Neither moved for a long while. From inside the cabin, the sound of Oliver turning in his sleep broke the stillness. Jovie pulled back just enough to whisper, "He's going to be all right here." "So are you," August said. And for the first time in years she believed it. By early May, the creek had risen with snow melt, running fast and silver through the folds of the valley. The cottonwoods had begun leafing out, pale green against the still brown hills, and the scent of earth was thick in the air. August returned from a job near Gros Ventre with a stack of cedar planks tied across the back of his wagon. He found Jovie kneeling in the garden bed behind the cabin, sleeves rolled and hair pinned up in a twist that had come mostly undone. Oliver sat nearby, poking at the soil with a stick, counting worms. "I brought cedar," August said. "Thought you might want shelves in the pantry." She brushed her palms on her skirt and stood. "You always bring something." He set the planks down near the fence. "I like seeing what grows from it." Jovie tilted her head. "You ever wonder what might have been different? If we'd met before all of it?" "No," August said. "If we'd met sooner, I wouldn't have been ready for you." She stepped closer, her gaze flicking toward Oliver, who was now chasing a beetle across the grass. "He asked me this morning if you were going to stay." August looked up. "Stay?" "He meant in our lives. Not just out here, but in the kind of way that doesn't change." August wiped his hands on his trousers. "And what did you tell him?" "I said I didn't know, but I hoped so." He took a step forward, the earth soft beneath his boots. "I don't move fast, Jovie. I know. But I build things to last." She reached out, her fingers curling just behind his elbow. "You already have." That evening, Oliver helped August lay out the cedar boards beneath the porch overhang. They worked quiet, the boy passing nails and holding corners steady. Jovie sat on the top step, sewing a patch onto Oliver's only jacket, her needle rising and falling in rhythm with the chirr of crickets. "You ever think about teaching?" August asked, not looking up. Jovie raised her eyes. "Teaching? Town's looking for someone to help at the school." Miss Lyle's been wearing herself thin. Jovie hesitated. I didn't finish school myself. Pa pulled us out early. You can read and write. You've got patience. I've seen the way you explain things. I don't know that they'd want me. They didn't want you here either. Doesn't mean they were right. She looked down at her stitching. I'd have to walk into that building every day knowing what they've said. They've seen you since. You stayed when most would have run. You helped their children when they were sick. That changes something. She didn't answer then, but the next morning, when August rode into town for nails and salt, she rode with him. They left Oliver with the widow who lived near the ridge. Jovie kissed his forehead, whispered something into his ear, and let him carry the bag of oats up the path himself. As their wagon rattled into town, Jovie kept her hands folded in her lap. Her shoulders were set, her jaw quiet. August glanced at her once, then faced forward. They passed the church, the blacksmith, the boarded-up old hotel. At the schoolhouse, August pulled the reins. You want me to go in with you? He asked. She shook her head. This part's mine. He watched her walk up the steps steady, unhurried. She knocked once, then opened the door. He waited outside, arms folded, a breeze lifting the brim of his hat. When she returned, she looked different, not lighter, not heavier, just more certain. They said yes, she murmured as she climbed back onto the wagon seat. He passed her the reins. Then you'll drive us home. She blinked at him, startled. I'll be beside you. She took the reins slow, feeling their weight. You really mean to stay, don't you? I never meant to leave. The horses stepped forward, and they began the long road back through the valley, the wheels creaking in time with the wind moving through the grass. Neither spoke for a while. There was no need. That night, after supper, Jovie leaned against the doorway of the cabin and looked out at the stars. August stood behind her, his hand resting on the frame. I still get scared sometimes, she said. I do too. Of what? He thought for a moment. Of losing something I didn't know I needed until I nearly didn't have it. She breathed in deep, the scent of pine smoke and damp cedar rising around them. I want you to stay every day, she said, her voice barely above the hush of the wind. August stepped closer, wrapping his arm around her waist. Then I will. She turned into him, let herself rest against his chest. He kissed her hair without a word. Inside, Oliver's soft breathing filled the space like a lullaby. They stayed there until the night grew cold, and then they stepped back into the warmth together. The first warm rains came in June, soaking the hard-packed earth and bringing up the scent of sage and damp lichen from the hills. Jovie stood barefoot in the doorway, her dress hemmed dark from the wet floor, a bundle of laundry under one arm. She watched the water bead along the porch rail, then turned to fetch the washboard, setting it in the basin near the well. August had taken Oliver to help mend a fence at the Peterson place, promising to return before lantern light. The quiet felt wide without them, and Jovie let her hands work through the rhythm of the day, scrubbing, rinsing, wringing while her thoughts wandered. By noon, the clouds broke, and the wind dried the lines heavy with linen. She stepped inside to rummage through the bottom drawer of the small chest August had built her, where she tucked away a folded square of muslin. It was the last scrap of her sister's apron, worn soft from years of use. She ran her thumb over the edge, considering it. When August and Oliver returned, the boy's cheeks were sunburned and his trousers damp at the knees. He was clutching a crooked horseshoe and grinning wide. We dug it up behind the barn, he said. Says it's lucky? Jovie took it from him and turned it over. Well, it's got the shape of something that held on a long time. August took off his hat, brushing the dust from his sleeves. How was the quiet? Too much of it, she said, but her smile didn't hide. That evening, while Oliver dozed curled near the hearth, Jovie unrolled the muslin on the table and flattened it with her palm. August, seated across from her, raised an eyebrow. I want to make him something, she said. Something that stays. August nodded once and reached for the pencil he kept near the ledger. You draw it, I'll help you cut the frame. They worked by lamplight, sketching a small pouch with a drawstring and a stitched lining. Jovie would sew it, August would shape the wooden clasp. It would be Oliver's, for stones or coins, or whatever small thing a boy might carry until he was grown. When the lamp burned low, she leaned back in her chair with a stretch and caught August watching her. What is it? I was thinking, he said. How strange it is that I lived 10 years out here and never saw what it could be until now. She looked down at her hands. I didn't think I'd find anything steady again. Do you feel steady now? I feel like I could be. August reached across the table, resting his calloused fingers over hers. That's enough to start. The next week, Jovie began walking to the schoolhouse twice a week, guiding Oliver along the trail with a packed lunch and a folded slate under one arm. The teacher had assigned her 2 younger pupils to guide through basic letters. Teaching came to her slowly, like remembering a song she once knew. She watched the children's faces for signs of understanding, adjusting her words when they seemed to cloud over. One afternoon, as she packed up for the walk home, the teacher lingered near the door. I was wrong about you, she said, quiet. Jovie didn't answer right away, just tied the string of her satchel tight. I believed what I heard before I ever saw for myself. Jovie met her eyes. Most do. I hope you'll keep coming. I will. As she stepped outside, August waited near the hitch post, a length of rope coiled over one shoulder. He reached down to lift Oliver into the wagon bed, then turned to her. You look like you belong here. I'm getting used to the dust on my boots. That night, she found him in the small shed behind the barn, smoothing the edges of the clasp for the pouch. He held it out to her, shaped from pine, sanded to a sheen, the initials OJ carved into the underside. I thought he might like it more if it felt like it was his alone. She took it in both hands, then stepped forward and kissed his cheek, soft and slow. Thank you. He turned, catching her waist. You're the one building a life here. I'm not building it alone. August met her eyes, and the quiet between them deepened. It wasn't the hush of absence anymore, it was the kind that filled a room when everything was right where it should be. Outside, the wind moved through the grass, carrying the scent of the new season. Inside, they stood still, 2 people who had stopped running, hands clasped in something soft and certain. By midsummer, the wild grasses had crept high along the fence line, and the bees moved heavy through the blooms on the edge of the pasture. Jovie stood in the doorway of the cabin, tying her hair back with a narrow strip of homespun. The days had taken on their own rhythm, school on Mondays and Wednesdays, mending and garden work in between, and Oliver growing faster than the seams of his clothes could hold. She glanced at the table. A small wooden box sat there, the one August had quietly made the week before. She hadn't asked for it. He hadn't said what it was for. But she knew. It was meant to hold things that mattered. That morning, August returned from the North Ridge with a length of rawhide and a worn book of verse he'd found tucked in the rafters of the old trading post. He handed it to her without comment. She ran her fingers over the faded cover, then looked up at him. I didn't think I'd ever own something like this again. I figured it belonged with someone who'd open it. They didn't speak more on it. They didn't need to. Later that week, while Oliver was helping the widow by the creek gather eggs, Jovie and August worked side by side in the field, clearing brush near the edge of their land. A rusted wagon axle lay half buried in the grass. August bent to lift it, but paused when Jovie knelt beside it instead. I used to think anything broken had to be buried, she said. Now I think maybe you can carry it different. August studied her face. You carry things quiet. I've had practice. He reached for her hand, just briefly. You don't have to with me. That evening, under the slant of golden light, they sat on the porch with a tin of blackberries between them, each taking one now and then, fingers stained dark. A pair of bluebirds tangled in the air above the trees, and the sound of Oliver's humming drifted through the open window. Jovie set her head against August's shoulder. He's starting to call this place home. August brushed his thumb lightly against her knuckles. It is. She looked up at him. And you? I knew it was mine the first time I saw you reading to him in that church. She didn't answer, just curled her fingers around his. One morning in late July, the teacher arrived with a basket of preserves and a folded notice. Jovie opened it slowly. The town council was offering her the assistant's post permanently. The teacher smiled, not asking for thanks, just leaving the paper and the basket and walking back down the path. Jovie found August laying shingles on the shed roof and held the notice up to him. They want me to stay on. He didn't climb down right away, just looked at her from where he stood, the sun behind him. Do you want that? She nodded. I think I do. He smiled, slow and certain. Then it settled. That night, they didn't speak of it again. Instead, they shared a supper of cornbread and beans, and when the fire burned low, Jovie took the book he'd given her and began reading aloud. Oliver fell asleep in her lap, and August leaned back in the chair, eyes closed, listening to the rise and fall of her voice. A few days later, August hitched the wagon and told Jovie to wear her good blue dress. She raised an eyebrow, but he only said he had something to show her. They left Oliver with the widow again, this time with a small coin in his hand and a promise to be back before supper. They drove west, past the edge of the valley and into a wide clearing lined with aspen. A creek curved along one side, and the grass was soft underfoot. August helped her down from the wagon and pointed toward a cluster of flat stones. I found this place years ago, he said. Never brought anyone here. It's beautiful, she said. I thought maybe we could say something here. Something that stays. She turned to him slowly. Are you asking me? I'm not much for speeches, he said. But I know I want to build the rest of my days with you. And I want Oliver to grow up knowing what steadiness looks like. She stepped toward him and took his hand. Then ask? He smiled, eyes steady. Jovie Jennings, will you marry me? She didn't hesitate. Yes. They married the following week, under the cottonwoods behind the cabin, with the teacher and the widow standing witness. Oliver wore a clean shirt and carried the pouch she'd sewn for him, the one August had helped make. Jovie wore a dress she'd altered herself, with a ribbon at the waist and her sister's old shawl draped over her shoulders. August held her hand as though it had always been his to hold. After the small supper and a song or two hummed by the widow, Jovie and August stood alone near the fence line, watching the horizon bloom with evening. I never thought I'd have something like this, she said. You made it, he replied. I just came to meet you in it. She turned to him, her eyes soft. I'm not running anymore. You never needed to. They kissed beneath the rise of the first stars, the air warm and still around them. Years passed. The cabin grew fuller, a second room added, the pantry shelves built sturdy and deep. Jovie kept teaching, her name spoken now with warmth, not suspicion. August's hands stayed strong, carving and building, but his evenings were given to reading beside the hearth. Oliver stretched nearby with a book of his own. When the boy was grown, he left with a sure heart and a promise to return each season. He did. Always with stories, always with laughter, always with respect in his eyes when he looked at the two people who had stood by him when the world hadn't known what to do. Jovie and August grew older in the same house they built with their hands and their quiet. They planted plum trees, and each year watched them bloom. They spoke less some days, but needed fewer words. Their love deepened in the way spring gives way to summer, so naturally it became the land beneath their feet. And when they sat together in the twilight of their days, the wind moving soft through the grass, they both knew they had built something that would not be lost. Not ever.